The Othello we meet is a very successful general, a kind of mercenary for hire. Mercenary leaders were very common in 16th and 17th century Italy, and he's very successful. The Venetians actually always hired a mercenary general to run their land army, so it's actually not weird that a foreigner would be running the Venetian army. The Venetians, in fact, insisted on that for various reasons about their own domestic politics. But before Othello was a kind of great general, he is, by his own account, a former slave. In his speech to the senators, which you should also watch the video of the great American actor James Earl Jones doing that speech. Never say only the British can do Shakespeare. I give you Mr. James Earl Jones. In his speech to the Senate, Othello mentions a list of things that have happened to him, and he includes this line. This line. Um, he tells her about the disastrous accidents of moving accidents by flood and field, of hairbreadth steps in the imminent deadly breach, of being taken by the insolent foe and sold to slavery. I'm in Act 1, Scene 3, around line 135. Of my redemption thence. Of being taken by the insolent foe and sold to slavery, of my redemption thence. I want to talk and historicize what slavery would have been for Othello. We are seeing a black man who's been sold into slavery, and our mind immediately goes, of course, to the transatlantic slave trade, which dominated the 18th and the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries and really shaped the history of the United States, certainly. That the British are only beginning to put their toe into the transatlantic slave trade. It has not yet begun in a way it will. We will see, which we in a way we will see in subsequent readings. We are going to see more about transatlantic slavery and the English involvement in the slave trade very much more in this semester. But they're really not doing that yet. Othello has not been grabbed and transported across the Atlantic. He's part of an earlier kind of slavery that pre-existed and coexisted with the slave trade we know of, which started a little earlier and which is different in certain ways. This is by no means to excuse it. There is no such thing as good slavery in the same way there's no such thing as good murder. But I think we can all agree there are aggravated circumstances of murder. You killed your you killed your brother, King of Denmark. You killed your house guest and relative, Macbeth. Right? We know there are aggravated circumstances. The Western Europeans, very much including the English and the English colonists in America, are about in the period we study to take the existing evil of slavery and aggravate it and make it worse. Othello has clearly been taken as a prisoner of war by the insolent foe and enslaved this way as part of the ongoing Mediterranean slave trade, which was going on at this period. The important thing about this slavery is it is not itself racial. The idea that one particular racial group is the one that gets enslaved or is not yet the idea. Across the Mediterranean, Christians and Muslims are enslaving each other in kind of ongoing naval war and piracy and raiding and pillaging of coastlines. They play all the hits. In this, people get enslaved and freed and rescued, redeemed. All kinds of things happen. People get enslaved and converted into the religion of the culture that enslaved them. It's going on all the time. It is equal opportunity prisoner of war slavery. They often become galley slaves, where you're forced to kind of row the ship till you die. Othello has been, this is not yet going to be the transatlantic slave trade where people become a commodity and it becomes hereditary, and then it becomes only one racial group, and then it is imagined as intergenerational. It is not that yet. Not yet. Though the British are just beginning to do that kind of slavery. Othello's from the earlier kind of slavery, which does persist well into the early 1800s. Eventually, I mean, President Thomas Jefferson has to sick the Marines, yes, the U.S. Marines, on some North African pirates who are still doing this stuff in the early 1800s. I also want to point out, if we read that passage closely, it is not clear who the insolent foe is. Othello has been taken by the insolent foe and sold into slavery and redeemed thence. But by whom? Was he could have been enslaved by Muslim figures. He could have been enslaved by Christian figures. The play will not tell us. Who enslaved him? Who was the insolent foe? How did he get redeemed and by whom? Totally up for grabs.